Growing your team can be a hard process in and of itself. I know several episodes ago I talked about ways to find people to add to your team, but how do you onboard them? Do you have a process in place? If the answer is no, and or if you're not happy with the process you have, then I would encourage you to watch this video today. This should help you. Well, thanks for checking out the Curtis Biswell Show. My name is Curtis Biswell, self explanatory. And if you're new to checking this channel out, my vision is to cultivate a thriving community where worshipers are raised in character, competence, and cognitive health, empowering local churches, colleges to flourish. And so today's episode, we are going to be diving in how to onboard for success. And in fact, these are five ways to help you onboard for success. You see, early on in my worship leading ministry, almost 20 years ago, I was on staff. Technically, I was volunteer at a small inner city church in KCK here in Kansas City metro area. And I was just fresh out of college. I had studied worship ministry. And at that point, I was super green. And my process was this: when I knew somebody that played, I threw them on the team. And I really didn't have anything other than that. Um, I would like to say that only a couple years passed and I realized that that wasn't a great system and process, but actually it was several years that had passed. And I started to realize, man, I need something in place to kind of vet people, to audition people, because here's usually the two extremes that you face, and there could be more, but here's two of the extremes that you face in worship ministry. You have somebody who is a gifted singer or a musician or tech person, but he or she is not the most or is not the best role model that you want on stage, people looking at, like people to model after their life. And let me be clear, we should know that nobody's perfect, and we aren't trying to set such a high bar that nobody can play, because if that's what you have in place, then there will be nobody on the team, because we are not perfect, right? But there's that balance of, still you are somebody that people see in a type of leadership. If you're on stage, if you're leading in any capacity in the worship ministry or any capacity, you are elevated to a leadership role, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not. So that's one extreme. You have gifted musicians, singers, tech people, but maybe they aren't at the right leadership qualities or spiritual qualities that you're looking for as a role model or a leader. Or the opposite end of the spectrum is you have somebody with the greatest heart, the biggest heart. They are truly a role model, a good example of that reflects the mission, vision, values of your church and of Jesus, right? But yet they can't carry a tune in a bucket, or their competency in their instrument is more of a distraction because it's just not there. So that's why you need things in place in order to onboard people. So then it really takes the pressure off you as the leader. Is like, it's not coming down to, man, Curtis said no or Curtis said yes. It becomes less subjective if you have things, systems and processes, handbooks in place, to kind of give you the why and to give you the expectations. So that's kind of how I arrived at my need for an onboarding process. Now, I will say this before I give you the five, what I feel like are the five key ingredients to a successful onboarding process. I will say this, not everybody is administrative. And so never fear if that's not you, if you're like, man, I am not good at, I would rather just write down somebody's name and then I'll try to get a hold of them and we'll just go from there. Like, first of all, it's okay if you're not administrative minded. And maybe the reality is like you are bivocational or you're volunteer. And so you've been asked to lead this ministry, but yet you don't have a lot of time. Find somebody around you that is more administrative minded, even if they have a full-time job as well. We're not looking for paid positions here, but somebody that can help you create a system, create a process, and help you manage and administrate that system, because then that will set you up for success and set the people you're onboarding up for success. Step number one, or point number one, is gather information. I mean, that sounds like a duh statement, but you need to gather their information some way, somehow. And again, technology has come a long ways to make everybody's job easier, especially if you are a bivocational leader. And so I'm just going to give you two examples that are easy to use and things that I've used in different ministry areas. Number one is Planning Center. Again, shameless plug here. Planning Center is such a great tool. I would highly encourage you checking that out if you don't use that in your church setting. It can do a lot of different things. But one of the things that it can do that I'm referencing is under Planning Center, people, you can create forms. And we use at my current church, we use Planning Center as our church database. So if you're collecting information that you want a part of your church database anyways, it's just best if they can all talk to one another. So I create a application form within Planning Center as soon as I find out that somebody expressed interest. And again, a lot of times how I find that out is maybe somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm a musician, I'm a vocalist. I enjoy running slides or sound or lights." That's one way, but another way is, again, we have another form inside Planning Center that's our connect card. And so when new people are checking out our church and they come to our church, and we talk about this every Sunday. Hey, if you're new to two or more church and you would love to get more involved or find out more about us, scan this QR code, and that QR code takes them to a form in Planning Center that we created. And it's our digital connect card. And in that digital connect card, there's a category that says, are any of these areas interest to you? I talk about children's ministry, first impressions, worship arts, and I'm leaving one off. But we list three or four areas that we that basically it's creating serving opportunities for people. And I'm a firm believer that we don't just go to church to sit in church to be fed. We should be serving in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so gathering information and Planning Center is the primary way that I use, but you could also use like a Google Forms. Again, that's free, and you could gather your information that way in that form or that application that I create in Planning Center and or Google Forms, because I've done that for another organization. I'm trying to capture, or I'm trying to find out two different areas. Okay. First of all, I'm trying to get a good spiritual assessment of where they are. And again, I try to be always upfront with people and say, like, don't view this as like, oh man, I'm going to answer poorly to that question. I'm probably not going to have a chance on the team. That's not what this application is about. It's just for me to get a good feel for this person, especially I probably don't know them very well if they're new. So I'm trying to get some spiritual information, like if I ask things about if when they have been saved, have they been baptized, um, what's their definition, or how do they view worship, just a few different questions to kind of give me a spiritual assessment of where they are. The second thing I'm trying to find out is a musical assessment, because again, I'm talking about worship arts, so I'm primarily looking for musicians and singers, I still do include certain questions in that would appeal to people that are tech savvy. Okay, because I need that as well. That's part of they are part of the team as well. So that's point number one, gathering information. Point number two, or step number two, is state expectations. I think it's good to be clear up front as best as you can and over communicate up front. And so the way I do this is I have created years ago, and then I've modified it at the different churches that I've been a part of, but not a lot has changed in what I feel called to lead and manage and oversee as a worship team, right? Or a music team, as I like to call it, is I have what I call a music team handbook. And that took me several months to gather information, ask different worship leading peers of mine, and then kind of compile here's what I feel that would be best to inform my music team documents. And in that music team documents, I list mission, vision, and values. Okay. Those are the things that we are about as a music team, and they should align with your church, right? And the things that your church are about. But also the vision, like where are you headed to? Like what are you aspiring to be about? And what are you aspiring to be about as a music team? And then values, like here are the things that we value as a music team, and things like communication and character, and just to name a couple, those are the things that I include in that music team document. Then I have separate documents that I send with this that are broken down by either the instrument that they play and or a vocalist. So like acoustic guitarist, bass guitarist, drums, keyboard, vocalist. Those are the primary ones that we use. And so I kind of give a one-page bullet point. Here's the skills desired, and I say that on purpose, not required, but desired to that to be a part of the team. So here's what I'm looking for as an acoustic guitar player. Like these are the things that are desired skills to serve in that capacity. Okay, so I send both of those together, the music team handbook and the skills desired sheet, depending on what they are auditioning for, or what they're interested in playing, or if they're interested in singing. So that's step two. I would like to just pause here, and if any of this has been helpful to you thus far, I know we've only covered two steps, but I would encourage you to like and subscribe. I'm trying to be a resource to other worship leaders, pastors, and churches that are in need. And so if you think that this has been helpful, I would encourage you to stay up to date by liking and subscribing to catch everything that I am putting out. Step number three is have a conversation. So once I have gathered the information and I have stated expectations, then I'm going to have a conversation. And so, sometimes I have a conversation before some of that, but typically those are the first two things I do. And then I try to set up a time where we can grab coffee or lunch or something of that nature, or even just a phone call, and just kind of talk through, okay, was there anything that didn't make sense? And this is important because you you don't want people to feel like you're setting such of this structured thing in place to where you're sapping all the authenticity out of it. That can be a turnoff to people. But if you can have that conversation face to face, preferably, and say, okay, what a part of that handbook didn't make sense? What are some concerns that you have? What are some worries that you have? Because sometimes people will read something like, "Oh man, I don't know all my scales. I don't know all my musical scales. So, am I gonna be able to be on the team?" Like talking through, like, okay, well, that's a desired skill. It's not a requirement. And you just try to eliminate some of that worry or answer any of the questions that they have. So that personal conversation right there in the middle of the process is very important. Step four is to set up an audition period. Now, full disclaimer, I reference in the handbook that I send them, right? I say I send them that, and step two, I send them that handbook. I reference briefly of what the audition process will look like. But again, I kind of tailor it depending on the level of where those people are at, how far advanced they are in their musical abilities or what have you. I don't always drag people along the same amount of time, because it's kind of this personal reflection, or it's gauging the best next step for them. And so that's when I kind of set up an audition period. And I say period because I will typically have some sort of live audition after I've gathered their information and sent them the handbooks and had a conversation. But depending on their comfort level and how well they start meshing and learning the things that we use, because little things like in-ear monitors, a lot of people that I have auditioned over the years or onboarded over the years, that was a new thing to them. They had never worked with in-ear monitors. And so that's a little bit of a learning curve, an adjustment, playing with clicks and tracks. That's a little bit of a learning adjustment for a lot of people. And so you want to onboard them properly and give them enough of a on-ramp to get them comfortable. You're not going to just throw them up on stage and they're anxious or their anxiety's through the roof, and then they're going to play tight and ultimately become a distraction in as we are trying to lead worship. So that audition period is flexible depending on their comfort level and depending on my assessment of how they are coming along, playing with the band, playing with the team, running the slides, all that sort of thing, right? So that's step four. The last step that I use for a successful onboarding process is then, once they've completed all four, now they're ready to be scheduled on a Sunday morning service. All right. And then you start scheduling them because you've seen they've checked all the boxes, if you will, and now they're comfortable to be playing in a Sunday morning service. All right. So those are my 5 steps that I have used over the years to create a successful onboarding process. My challenge to you, or my encouragement to you, is if this can be beneficial to you, start implementing this in your church right now. And if you need help with that, like if I didn't go into great detail of all the questions in my application, and I didn't to go into detail of all the things in the music team handbook. So I will say, if you're wanting to find out more on that music team handbook, in the description, I'll post a link for a free download, for a free PDF download of that handbook that I'm referencing. And my encouragement to you is take that. Maybe it's a springboard for you, and take from that what you will. You can copy and paste it in your own document. You can rephrase things to suit your church needs, or maybe you only use this point and this point, but hopefully it will help inform your music team philosophy of that handbook to set your team up for success. But also, in addition to that, if you would like to find out more on what an application could look like and help you inform creating your own, I'd be happy to have a conversation. So just send me an email and we can set up a time for a Zoom call or a phone call, and I can walk you through that. I'm here to help in any way that I can. So please have that conversation with me. God bless you guys, and may He bless your ministry as you onboard people. Because here's the thing, you're not just onboarding people to grow your team. I hope you realize that. You are creating serving opportunities and discipleship or discipling opportunities because you are pastoring those people. Anybody that joins your team is people that you are pastoring, you are shepherding. And so it's not to just fill a need. It's to create discipling opportunities to grow the kingdom of God. And so I hope this helps you, and stick around for more episodes.